Okay, welcome to this edition of The Hot Seat. My name is Mark O'Keefe. I'm executive editor for HeraldStandard.com. Our guest today is Lieutenant David Heckman. Lieutenant is the commander of the state police station here in Uniontown. And I just want to talk a couple minutes about your background. How long have you been the commander at the Uniontown State Police Station now?
Well, first of all, Mr. O'Keefe, thanks for having me here today. And I actually became the commander of the Uniontown Barracks in July of 2009. I started my career here in 1988 as a patrolman, a uniformed trooper. I spent approximately 4 years as a trooper here at Uniontown Barracks, and then went to narcotics for 9 years, both as a trooper and a supervisor. Made rank, stayed in Washington for a year and a half as staff sergeant, and then I returned back here in 2002 and I headed up the criminal investigation unit as a sergeant. In 2008, I was promoted to lieutenant, and I was at the Pittsburgh station for a year and a half before my return here to Fayette County as the Uniontown station commander.
And the Uniontown station is one of the bigger stations in state, correct?
Yes, it is. It has a very large complement of sworn members and civilian staff.
And how many people do you have?
We're allocated, I believe we're up close to 109 people when fully staffed.
Mm-hmm. And of course your caseload, I would imagine, is pretty full, and a lot of cases that you have. Is it, and you don't even really cover all of Fayette County, right?
No, we cover about 2/3. Outside of Uniontown and Collinsville have their own police departments, full-time departments. We cover the bulk of Fayette County, the south, east, and east of the county. Upper and lower Tyrone, Franklin, Redstone, Luzerne, and up in that direction is actually covered by the Bell Vernon Barracks.
Mm-hmm. So, but with your caseload, have you seen an increase in the number of cases that you handle over the years, and where's that at now?
Well, just total number of calls. Our last year, we had about 17,500 calls. Those range anything from seeing an officer to serious criminal incidents and serious traffic incidents. So we do have a large volume of calls. We have fluctuation in certain types of crimes. I would say probably the vast majority of our property crimes, and property crimes are a big problem. When I reference that, I mean burglaries and thefts, and the majority of those crimes are driven by drug dependency. Mm-hmm. And so that drugs are the major source of the problems. Everything else, I believe, is symptomatic as it comes to the criminal aspect of our caseload.
Mm-hmm. I guess part of the thing with the huge kind of caseload is that, number one, you do cover so much because we don't have that many local police as compared to other parts of the state where you have a lot of local police. I know I grew up in Beaver County, and up there every town had their own police departments and stuff, but that's really not the case here. So is it so much that's why maybe you have such a big caseload, or is it just that we kind of have more crime here than what may be average for the state? What's your experience with that?
I concur with that, Mr. O'Keefe. I do believe because we handle such a large geographic region without a police department, and some townships that are heavily populated that have a lot of businesses in, that is going to cause us to have a number of calls. I think if you look comparatively at other counties that have the same type of population, that have a lot of local municipal police, the state police barracks aren't as big. So I do agree with that. But I do think that poverty rate and unemployment rate and drug dependency rate does have an influence on that as well. And I do think that, and it's been documented, that Fayette County does have some of the higher rates compared to some of the other counties in the state. So I believe it's a dual issue there, but that's what I believe anyways.
Mm-hmm. And you did mention about drugs. So is that really the biggest problem you think that the area faces? And do you have any idea maybe is it, maybe talking with other people or whatever, that the drug problem maybe here is worse than in other areas, or is it just that drugs are a problem everywhere?
From every other police department that I've talked to, I know you talked to Uniontown and Connellsville, and I talked to a number of departments outside of the county. The drug issue is a problem everywhere. It's not just confined to this county. The biggest issue that we've had, that I've seen a surge in this year, has been heroin use. And I believe that that is caused by the purity rate of heroin increasing over the years and the cheap cost of heroin over the years. And if I give you an example on that, in 1992 when I went to Vice, heroin, if you wanted to buy heroin, we predominantly went to two different places in Allegheny County. Those were the sources. Purity of heroin was 50% if it was good, and the price of heroin was $20 a bag. Now we're getting heroin with 90% plus purity rate, and it's under $10 a bag. So when you have a flooding of high quality, cheaply priced drugs, unfortunately, it's going to have a cause and effect. And I believe that that is the primary source of a lot of our property crimes. We've seen a lot of residential burglaries home during the day. We've cleared a number of those cases, but they continue to pop up. And the actors that we have arrested in a number of those cases are heroin-dependent people who need money to continually feed their habits. So if I go back to the root source, I do believe that drug dependency is one of our biggest problems here.
And yeah, and the cheap cost is certainly has to be a factor in that too, because if it's just so easy for people to get, but yet they have to get this all the time, and so then they are constantly probably looking for ways of getting this money. It's probably easier to get into it because it's cheaper, but then once you get into it, then you have to be constantly finding ways to get this kind of money to support that.
I agree, and like even prescription pills and narcotics, once you get an opiate addiction, it continuously needs more and more of those drugs to have the desired effect on that person. So although it may be initially cheap, as they have to use more and more, it becomes an expensive habit.
Mm-hmm. What would you tell, like, parents maybe, that some things to look out for or to be kind of concerned? I mean, let's face it, a lot of teenagers, they go through all kind of phases, mm-hmm. and maybe they're looking different, or they dye their hair or something like that. And some of that stuff may just be a phase, but then there's other things that maybe it would be a sign of that they're using drugs, and especially, probably back maybe 20 or 30 years ago, maybe they were smoking marijuana or something, but now maybe that's the marijuana leads to heroin easier, I guess. Is that kind of what you're seeing?
There's some people that believe in the marijuana being a gateway drug and stepping stones to other drugs. And I can just base my opinion and experiences on my own through my years in narcotics, and also as a parent myself who has teenage children. The biggest thing I can tell people is to be active in your children's lives. Know their friends, know where they're going, know what they're doing, keep them involved in extracurricular activities, sports, the school, have an emphasis on academics. If you're in any type of faith-based organization, have the children involved in that, be it regardless of the denomination, and keep them busy and active. I know my son's friends. I know where he's at. I know what he does. Sometimes to his chagrin, but I'm very, very active. Parents, and I've met them many times throughout my career, unfortunately at times are naive. And they have this opinion that we're a good family, it's never going to happen to my children, we're not that kind of family. but it does. Unfortunately, as a vice officer, I was put in positions where I filed charges on police officers' children, clergy's children. It can happen to anyone if you allow your children to drift. It covers all socioeconomic classes. It's not confined to poor counties and poor school districts. Affluent towns and affluent school districts have these problems too.
In some ways, probably even maybe more, because the kids have more, maybe have more money. But and I think that part of it is like when you think of heroin, you know, a lot of people think of like people, you know, shooting themselves up, and they think of dirty alleys and dirty needles and that sort of thing, and they don't really realize that how that the heroin culture has kind of changed and how just accessible.
It's such a pure drug now. I mean, initially it can be sniffed. It doesn't have to be injected, but usually, from my experience, it will go eventually to an IV drug use. Everybody wants to look for needle tracks on the arms, but we have people that shoot themselves up with dope in between their toes, and put it in places that are easily concealed and not looked for. So the stereotypical heroin junkie who lives in the alley with needle tracks up and down their arms, this isn't always the case. It can be a person who holds down a job, who lives in a good neighborhood, and until they come crashing down, people were unaware of what's occurring. I believe that if you're active in your children's lives, that you're going to see telltale signs of concern: withdrawal, different groups of friends, failing grades, lack of participation in activities that they were once involved in. When you start to see dramatic change like that, I think that those are indicators or alarms that something's going on. It might not be drugs. It may be some emotional issues or trauma issues with relationships. I mean, but to stay active and keep a good, open course of conversation with your children is essential. And I had a reverend from a local church call me, and he had questions on what he could do. And again, my biggest thing is with the children, to become interacted with them within the school, with the parents, the church, faith-based type organizations, and hopefully instill some good moral and ethical values in them, and to educate them on the downfalls of taking that road to drug addiction.
Right. And probably just kind of being vigilant, or just kind of even being aware that this thing is out there, and so you do have to be careful, and you can't just always maybe trust your kid that, you know, whatever they tell you is fine, or whatever, that you do need to be looking into really what they're doing and that sort of thing.
I agree. I don't, youthful enthusiasm, and there's no sense of mortality, and there's no sense of the finality of certain actions. And that's something that I've tried to instill in my children, and I know a lot of the members that I work with do the same. And that's the best advice I can give parents. And the problem is a lot of times that some of the kids from the less fortunate areas with less fortunate families don't have that parental guidance or that steady hand to lead them through life. And unfortunately, I think that these kids are more at risk. So that's where the extended family, the relatives, grandparents, ministers, hopefully will step up and take the lead with some of these children, because not everybody has the opportunities. And so I do hope sincerely that those people and those children find the steady hand to guide them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we're going to take a break right now. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back to this edition of The Hot Seat. My name is Mark O'Keefe. I'm Executive Editor for HeraldStandard.com. My guest today is Lieutenant David Heckman. Lieutenant Heckman is commander of the State Police Station here in Uniontown, a big station with a lot of guys and a lot of crime, and so you're a pretty busy guy there. And let's talk, in the first part we were talking more about the drug use, and you were talking about the heroin and how that seems to be definitely on the rise. It's a lot purer and it's also a lot cheaper. But then once these people get hooked into this thing, then they're constantly looking for looking for the money. And that's where you said, like, you see a lot of property crimes, a lot of people breaking into houses, a lot of robberies, burglaries, that sort of thing. So what kind of advice do you have for people that maybe, for people maybe that aren't really aware of these types of problems and stuff, and so maybe they're thinking like their neighborhood's safe when maybe their neighborhood really isn't all that safe anymore?
Well, I think one of the biggest things you can do to protect your property is hardening the target. And what I mean by that is making it less desirable to the local burglar. Most of our burglaries are not sophisticated. They're not this organized Mission Impossible type burglars. These are smash and grab type of crimes. There are a number of things you can do. One, our department oversees a number of crime watch, neighborhood watch programs. That's something that you can become organized in your community, or if your community doesn't have one, you can call the state police community relations officer and request to get a neighborhood meeting and get one started.
What's the number out there?
724-439-7111. And getting to know your neighbors, keeping an eye on each other's properties, once you know your neighbors and you know who's supposed to be in the community and who's not, you're going to know who's not supposed to be in the community. If you see suspicious activity, call the state police or your local law enforcement. Be wary of door-to-door people coming, offering unbelievable deals on paving or lawn service or that type of thing. A lot of times these are just ploys to case an area out.
Get in the house or something.
Right. Seasonally, we have a number of people who come in. They distract the homeowner. A lot of times these tend to be elderly people. Somebody else is in the house rifling through, looking for cash and jewelry and other type of items that can be easily carried away. Don't let people into your home. Secondly, when I mean hardening the target, keep the hedges and stuff down. Keep your windows visible. Keep your doors visible. If you can, and have some type of motion light sensors around your property. If you go on vacation, let trusted neighbors know. Stop the mail delivery. Stop the newspaper delivery. Don't let things pile up to where it's obvious that nobody's picking things up and answering the door. Put some timers in the house that lights come on and off periodically. It's a very cost-effective way to give the illusion that someone's home. Those are steps, just a few steps that people can take to harden the target and to make it less desirable. Other ways that cost a little bit, and maybe an alarm system, maybe some type of audible device that goes off once unauthorized entry is made. Those are all things that can help harden your target, so the potential burglar or thief can see that and say, well, this place looks like it might be a little too tough. I'm going to move on to the next easy target.
What about a dog?
Dogs are good. Even little dogs,
yeah.
Which they alert you to people coming and going. I have a dog, and he barks a little bit more than I'd like, but he lets me know when somebody's around. And those are really a good thing to have. So another way to harden the target.
Mm-hmm.
And
just anything to kind of maybe discourage the burglar from making yourself an easy target.
Don't leave the garage doors open. Our burglaries usually spike in June. And why is that? Because people are opening things up, people are keeping things open, they're opening the windows, they're leaving the windows open when they go away. And they make themselves targets. Don't make yourself a target. Don't make yourself a potential victim. These can help. And those are the best ways that the average person can harden their target.
Now you say that, if you see suspicious activity or something, that you can call the state police. Now, but obviously you don't want, maybe people are thinking, well, gee, I don't want to be maybe I'm being paranoid or something, or I don't want to be bothering you guys for nothing. So where would you, and obviously too, you don't want to be just responding to every little thing out there. What would you say, like, you would think would maybe warrant a phone call?
Well, if I seen somebody knocking on a home, going around, peering through the windows, looking around to see what's there, obvious suspicious activity. Just simply a person walking down the street. That's
No
not
big deal.
No,
But if you see
probably-
them,
But you see somebody, and a lot of times they don't want to be seen. They don't want to be noticed. And you'll know. The average person's going to know. You're going to have that feeling. You're going to see something that just doesn't seem right. And those are the times that you should call.
Mm-hmm. What about people, protecting themselves? What do you say in terms of maybe whether people should get a gun or not get a gun, or what kind of advice do you give people in that regard?
The laws are the laws on gun ownership, and what I will say is this: when you have children or other people in a home, you should not leave guns unattended. You should not leave loaded guns laying around. I don't know personally. I lock my guns up when I go home. I have children. I lock my guns up. So somebody comes in at night, my guns are locked. Now I can get to them quickly. They're easily accessible with the type of locks that I have. But I have all my weapons secured. And most police officers are going to have their weapons secured. So there's a risk with anything. And people have the right to protect themselves. People have the right not to become victims of violent crime themselves. And so that's a question that I really can't give a cut and dry answer to, because every circumstance is different. Simply somebody stealing something out of your yard or stealing something from your property does not give you the right to use lethal force. To use lethal force, deadly force, you have to be in fear or risk of death or serious bodily injury to use that type of force, or to save someone else from serious death or bodily injury. So I caution people in just to keep those things in mind. And if you call, if something's going on, if something's that serious, if we get notice of it, we're going to be there as quickly as we possibly can. Most people are going to be scared off by occupants in a house. We don't have a huge amount of occupied structure type burglaries. Most of our burglaries and thefts are occurring, the vast majority of them are occurring on unoccupied residences, unoccupied commercial businesses. So that would be my answer. If you give me a particular circumstance, I could maybe give you a little bit more of a specific answer.
What about the Castle doctrine that now they've kind of lessened that, where I think before it was more like would only pertain to your house, and now it's like almost when you're out anytime or something. We're now they're giving people a little bit more leeway there in terms of if they encounter somebody or something. Do you think that's a good thing, or do you see problems with that?
To be honest with you, I haven't read the law. Mm-hmm. I haven't read that in its entirety. But again, when you're dealing with lethal force, deadly force, it has to be a last resort measure. Mm-hmm. It has to be to save your life or the life of someone else. That is my best advice. This isn't the Old West. We can't settle differences in that aspect. And I just don't see that being a real big issue in this area. I haven't encountered that in my 24 years here. That I just haven't encountered it yet. Not to say it couldn't happen tomorrow, but if you can retreat to a place of safety, if you can protect yourself to the point and get a hold of the local law enforcement, they're going to respond. They're trained. They know what they can do and not do. And even as a policeman, most policemen, that's the last thing they want to do is to shoot someone.
Mm-hmm.
That is the very last resort. We have a number of other options we can use, but if it comes to that, if our set of circumstances dictate, then that's what we're going to do. But it's something we just don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully that I've answered your question.
No, we appreciate that, sure. Well, what about people that say, like, maybe they're worried about, or they don't want to be identified if they call or something, or they're worried that, you know, the criminal's going to somehow get back at them or whatever. What do you say? Do you see much of that, or in terms of cooperation from the public in general? Is it good, or could it be better, or do you think maybe people were worried unnecessarily about
I receive
stuff?
some anonymous letters from time to time, and some of them have legitimate merit. I know that. And those are things that we try to address. You can call a barracks, you can leave anonymous. There's also Fayette County Crime Stoppers, which is up and running again. You can call them. That information remains anonymous. We don't know who called, and they forward that information to us as well. I understand the reservations that people have, and but if you want to live in a good community, if you want to live in a community with less crime, it takes involvement in these crime watch programs and reporting criminal activity and suspicious activity. If you're not going to take a stand and get involved in making your community better, you're almost enabling it to continue to run the course that it's running. But we'll take any and all information, whether it's anonymous or not. If they can want to draft correspondence and send it to me, they can do that. I do receive those. Or if they want to call me at the State Police Barracks, that's fine too. I'll take those calls, and I will direct the information concerning whatever type of criminal activity, be it drugs or other types of crimes, to the appropriate unit within our barracks, and hopefully address some of those issues.
And I guess too, sometimes it could be a situation where if they just let you guys know about maybe that somebody sees maybe a drug dealing going on or something, if they would just call and let you know that this stuff's going on, then that person wouldn't have to testify at all, because you guys would be going out and checking it out and stuff.
They can point us in the right direction.
Right.
I've received some correspondence relative to certain types of cars and drug activity. Well, I alert my patrol units to that, and they know. And we'll run those plates in on those cars. And a lot of times, I just got one the other day. It was concerning an individual around Uniontown area that they thought was drunk driving up and down a particular street. I run the subject's driver's license. It's suspended. So we know what he's driving. We know he's suspended. So we got all the probable cause in the world now to pull him over. And I put that out to the patrol units. And I also coordinate information with the Collinsville and Uniontown police. You know, I email Chief Cox and Chief Capito's information. And so we have a very good line of communication with our local police departments and with the district attorney's office and his drug task force. Because if law enforcement all comes together and works together, we're going to get better results. So I encourage the input. I encourage the complaints.
And I guess too, some people might think, well, that you guys know about this stuff or whatever, but you can't really assume that, because you can't really be everywhere, right? So,
correct.
So that, you know, if you see something going on, yeah, give the police a call and give them a chance to get out there, you know.
Absolutely. I mean, not everyone can know everything, but with the community support and the information from the community, it gives us a leg up on some other intelligence that maybe we didn't know about. And in today's day and age, with everything that's going on and you know, potential terrorism, and even the federal government has come out and asked people to report suspicious activity. Mm-hmm. So we encourage that as well. The state police is heavily involved in intelligence gathering. That information doesn't haphazardly get wrinkled up and thrown away. It's going to be maintained, and you know, your information may be just one piece of the puzzle. We may have gotten other types of information about the same activity from different sources, and that just bolsters the information that may put us over the edge on able to get a search warrant or able to move forward with some potential police action. So it may seem minor to you, but it might fit into a bigger picture.
Okay, well, that's going to wrap up our show today. I want to thank Lieutenant David Heckman, Commander of
Thanks for having me.
State Police Station here in Uniontown. I want to thank you for watching. My name is Mark O'Keefe. I'm Executive Editor for HeraldStandard.com. We'll see you later.